Good evening, council, strangers. Good evening, guests. It's nice to see people in the council chambers after a couple of years. You might have fun tonight watching us struggle through this. It's actually been over 2 years since we've done an in-person meeting, so I'm not sure how it's going to go. We have new technology as well, so hopefully it's going out into the streaming world. So, I guess we'll start with the land acknowledgement statement, and I believe Councillor Armour's going to do that for us tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robertson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walk in the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you. And just, council, I'll remind everyone to speak directly into your microphones. Apparently, that's the only way the streaming works. So don't turn away. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting agenda dated Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries without any time delay. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have pecuniary interests in items 7.1 and 8.1 due to my association with the proponent in both those resolutions, or both those reports. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to start with invited and ceremonial presentations, and in keeping with our pledge to do something around climate change every other council meeting, I'm happy tonight that Councillor Wiebe is going to give us a quick talk on passive housing design.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, I'll keep this short. I'm going to keep it hopefully very clear. I want to talk a little bit about Passive House, which is, you see the slide there. It's a voluntary standard for energy efficiency in a building, which reduces the building's ecological footprint. That's a pretty simple way of saying it's really inefficient. It doesn't take a lot of energy to run. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the basics and keep it high level, because you can certainly get into the weeds and really nerd out on some of the stuff when you're looking at passive houses. Anyway, so here, this slide shows you kind of the basics and the really the principles and the things that really matter in order to achieve a passive house. So solar orientation, which means essentially try and orient a building that on the east-west axis, so that your south axis or your south plane, that's where you can put the majority of your windows. Number two is high insulation, so very thick walls and a very thick attic, and also very thick underfloor insulation values. High performance windows is very key. Which I find a little curious. In North America, there aren't a lot of companies that do really high performance triple glazed windows. And we're in such a cold climate, it sort of seems counterintuitive that there aren't more makers of these types of windows. And I'm going to show you an example of these types of windows that are very common actually in Europe. An airtight enclosure is number 4. So what we want to achieve is a very airtight building. And anyone who tells you that you want your building to breathe, they're right in that sense that there needs to be fresh air inside of a building, but what you don't want it is coming through, your windows and doors and, some of your penetrations where you would have let's say a laundry vent, etc. You want to have control over the air that's coming in and leaving the home. And number 5 is a balanced ventilation with heat recovery. So any system, all the new houses require an air exchange system. And the really good ones are really efficient. They meet passive standards, and they can exchange the air within the home very efficiently, very quickly, without really losing much of the actual heat. So you're not just bringing cold air in and sending warm air out. you're running it through a core, which allows that energy to get exchanged while you're exchanging the air. So it's pretty brilliant, actually. I wanted to show a couple of slides of just some really, what I think are some really great houses. Because anytime you're building a new type of home, or if people think that it's something that that's different and requires some, special design, et cetera, it's not true. You can build a passive house to these standards any way you want. You can make it look as traditional as you want, or you can make it as modern as you want. But one of the dead giveaways you'll see on a lot of the homes is you'll see more glazing to the south, very little to the north, and you'll see really thick walls. So you'll see windows that sit back well within the cavity, and that's part of the strategy. That is an example of a tilt and turn, triple glazed European passive standard window. So you can see by the profile there that the way it operates is they turn inwards like a door, or they tilt back like a vent. And the triple glazing is really high performance glass. And the real secret comes in the frames of these types of windows, where they're completely thermally broken so that you're not allowing cold air to penetrate through and pass through your window frames into your home. So in order to achieve, like I said, a really tight house, this is one of the key elements. There's really no point in putting a lot of money into air tightness and insulation, et cetera, if you don't put good windows in, because that's always your weak point in a building. This is a cross-section of a sample of a slab. This is an insulated slab underneath your what would be a concrete floor. And what you'll notice is it's quite thick. And the code now, I think, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, 3 inches under a slab? Is it of foam? I don't know. But most passive houses, most of the new high energy efficiency buildings go anywhere from 10 to 15 inches thick of foam. And it seems like overkill, but when you put all the elements together, again, you often lose a lot of heat through your basement or through your slab. So in order to keep that intact and keep your performance up and keep your, like I said, keep your bills down, this is one of the key elements as well. And that is just an image of a passive building in Vancouver, actually. And what I really wanted to show is simply that, again, it doesn't take anything really special in terms of design. Multi-family buildings can be built to the standard, of just about any size. It's really just a matter of using those simple principles when constructing, and good things come from it. So it's achievable on many different levels, and I'm hoping that in advance of tomorrow's presentation, which I'm quite excited about, you're going to hear the proponents talk about passive house buildings, passive designs, and they're going to be leading us towards looking at potentially making one of these buildings a passive house standard. So I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to not tell people how they should build, but how they could build, and this is an example of that. So. If there are any questions, wait, one last thing. When I say more energy efficient, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 90% reduction in your heating and cooling bills. Heating and cooling. These buildings stay very, very even temperatures throughout the seasons. So it's not just good. I mean, you can do it for environmental reasons if you want, but you can also do it for financial reasons. And anyone who's filled up their propane tank lately would probably agree. Anyway, I'll open it up, and is there another slide? Oh, well, here, that's why. That's why I knew I was missing something. Okay, so a little quick pros and cons, right? A draft-free home, extremely quiet home because of the levels of insulation, improved air quality because of the constant refreshing of air, and these homes that are built to last appraise much higher. So the downsides, 10 to 20% increase in upfront costs. So obviously you're going to need more insulation and a little bit more lumber. And it is a little harder to find people that are really tuned into this style of building, even though it's quite straightforward, but nevertheless. Sourcing high-performance materials, like I mentioned before, is a bit of a challenge. And basements aren't exactly conducive because it takes a little extra challenge to try and get that envelope secured, but it can be done. Okay, after I rattle that off, now I'll open to questions. Thank you, Councillor Stone. Are there any more slides? No, there aren't. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Counselor Weed. Looks like we've got lots of questions, and in the old format, the screen used to tell me who was first, so I'm just gonna rely on my eyes.
Have to bring the
And
yellow
Counselor
paddle.
Thompson, I saw your hand 3 times, so.
Thank you, yeah. Yeah, we got sort of deked out there by one more slide. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for that, Jonathan, really great. I remember a number of years ago, triple glazed windows were sort of in vogue for a short period of time, but not for an extended period of time. And then double glaze came back in. But with the triple glaze, what kind of R value are we talking about? Do you have any idea how that would compare, say, to an R20 wall or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because a really good European triple glazed window will probably come in at about an R8 or 9 even, which is actually extraordinary because your average double glazed window probably would come in at about 2.5, maybe 3. So it's a significant increase. But again, you'd be surprised that where the glass, like the actual panes of glass, isn't actually still your weak point in that window. It would still be the opening, still be the frame. And that'll always be the challenge. And the really, like I said, the really well done, the really great windows are the ones that have really thought that through. And if I'd had, I mean, I can share some more slides later, but you can see a cross-section of one of these windows literally cut in half. And you can see what all the thought and technology that goes into them. It's pretty remarkable. I think those are Argon. There's 2 options. They give you different options for how you orient your windows. Again, that gets a little more into the nerdy science of it, but yeah, you can probably count on Argon.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
I'm trying to get used to this all over again. It's wild. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Wiebe. That was a really good presentation and so important. Quick comment, and I do have a question. It was interesting to hear about the windows. As someone who is just at the end of building a new house, I was so pleased because we were checking off boxes, including, I think, 12 inches of insulation. So that was neat, and of course, orientation. And your explanation about the windows was interesting. I know that ours were ordered from Nova Scotia, and that was a new company. To your point about we're not doing as much, and so I thought that was interesting. On a positive note, the reference to the air exchangers is now required, so we are making progress, and that's really cool. My question is, though, we don't, in our planning process, every month when we deal with applications, require our builders and developers to have the south-facing orientation. And I wonder, since you presented, if that's something you think we should be thinking about as our applications come forward.
That's a good question and a good point. The trick there is when you look at your average neighborhood, you don't really get to choose where the street faces, right? I think, again, it goes back to, how you should build versus how you could build. I think that the more builders, the more people that understand just some of those subtleties to looking at your percentage of glazing north versus south, and even reducing the west, because when that low sun comes through, it'll really bake houses out. But, if we start to just send off, our new applications with a little more information, just some things to think about, I think it could go a long way. Because oftentimes people simply don't think of it. And it doesn't occur to them till afterwards, and people have moved in and thought, we got to get a shade on this window because we're baking in here. So that stuff happens, and it's pretty easily done to mitigate some of that, just by simply, looking at your percentages. In a neighborhood, you might want to put your big windows to the south, let's say if that's the street. But the person across the street, that's where it would take some thought into reducing the size of that glass and then maybe creating that space that centers more to the backyard. So it's really kind of taking a more holistic approach to it. But a little more information, and that's part of just why I wanted to be here and impart some of this, really kind of some of the basics, and put it out there and hopefully get some more conversations going around it. So that's great. Thanks.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was wondering whether I should hold my comment or not, but I suspect, great presentation. I'm pretty sure you don't have stock in this company, so you're good. But
There is no company. It's just good
But
building.
I suspect this is like most other things, like electric vehicles, for example. As fuel costs go up, the desire to do this kind of thing goes up as well, because there is, as you point out, a 10 to 20% increase upfront costs. I would imagine
Right.
that might be a little low ball, but, and plus with the cost of materials these days as well. And that becomes the issue. A lot of people were talking about attainable, affordable housing. How, I mean, this is like the Cadillac of environmental homes. So you kind of run into those.
It's a good point,
those
a really
issues.
good point. I think that when we think about more affordable houses, part of the trick too is how do you make houses more affordable to operate in the long term? And I'm hoping that some builders and some landlords, et cetera, can see the advantage to being able to perhaps charge a small premium, but at the same time, really lower those costs for the renters. They come in all shapes and sizes. If people want to sacrifice square footage to reduce their costs over the entire term of the home for 30, 40, 50 years, that's another decision to be made, right? So every time people look at when they first start sketching out an idea to build something, sometimes really good design and really efficient design and only building, rationally sizing buildings to the people who live in them can provide the opportunity to build a more resilient home and not be stuck with bills that can be quite crippling. I think that buying. I wish I'd have done this with the dollars from a couple of years ago and the material prices from a couple of years ago. I think anyone who did it and who barely, can heat the house with a candle is probably laughing right now and thinking, boy, we should have all done this sooner. But Europe is further ahead. There are some jurisdictions in Europe where this is now becoming the code, where it's expected of you. You're expected to build homes that don't cost a lot to heat or cool. So I think we'll look back and think, it was a tough road to get there, but we made it, and we'll be better for it, for sure.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be quick. I'm just curious, with the new homes that are being built through ICF, are they meeting that demand? And then the second part I think you said about windows being recessed back in. So is that sort of building there already with ICF? Is that meeting some of the requirements for this?
I don't think you could achieve this level of if you basically, in order to hit all the metrics, like how often the air is exchanged in a house, how tight a house is, you probably wouldn't meet it with ICF. But a well-crafted ICF home that's done with a lot of care is going to perform really well. And if you do some of the little extras, like reduce your northerly window sizes and reduce the number of operating windows versus fixed windows, and get rid of things like sash windows, you're going to get close. You know what I mean? You'll realize that, hey, maybe we didn't reduce our heating costs by 90%, but we got them down about 60%, and that's not so bad, right? So.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thanks, Councillor Wiebe. Good on you. Keep going after these people to help them out and just to make things better around here. I appreciate your efforts and your intelligence and sharing it with us.
Thank you. I appreciate that from someone who really knows his craft. So with that, I'm going to get out of here.
Just before you go, Councillor, I wish our CBO was here tonight. He's on vacation, I think. But is there?
Oh, but I have something to tell him.
Yeah. Is there any chance that the Ontario Building Code will incorporate some of these types of ideas into codes any day soon, or?
We'll get there. Like I said, I think we'll get there because it's, the roadmap is kind of in place. It just takes a while to, you know, to force people to change how they build. It's a tough ship to steer, right? We're steering the Titanic there a little bit. So I think, again, if we get more information out and you get more people that hear about these types of things and start requesting it from builders, they'll start to reach back and think, okay, so they want me to build something that's a little bit more like this. I got to start doing some homework. So that's what I'm hoping will start to happen. Incrementally, I think we can achieve it. You know, there's a couple things in the code that it's a little bit red tapey that gets in the way of some of these these methods, because you know, on paper, you have to have a continuous insulation layer on a home built in our zone, right? You need 2 inches of continuous insulation. And I get that. That's the right approach. It's a step in the right direction. But you could come forward, you know, a passive house creator could come forward with a design that technically doesn't have that broken 2 inches of insulation around the entire building. But because the walls are so thick and the construction is so robust, even the thermal bridging that's occurring in these buildings is still far exceeding the additional sort of styrofoam that you would put on a regular code building, if that makes sense. It's almost like the worst part of a building built to this standard is probably right on code. So if you can kind of get your head around that idea, that the weakest points meet code. So we've got a fair amount of, we've got some way to go, but like I said, I think we can get there. These houses, the further, this is what I always tell our MP, I say, the further north you go, the more important it is. And he tends to agree. So anyway, with that, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Good chat. Deputations, we have 2 tonight, and our first is Peter Redwood from the Rotary Club of Huntsville on the renaming of the Rivermill Bandshell in honor of a dear friend who has left us too soon. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Peter, I'm not sure your mic's on. You'll see the red circle when it is, yeah.
There we go. Sure different sitting down here than on the camera up back. Anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for allowing the Rotary Club of Huntsville to make this presentation. It's an idea that we had thought about, and my board's approved it. Normally, I would have a number of Rotarians with me here tonight, but unfortunately, it's too busy a night for us. We've got 4 of our prominent Rotarians doing bingo, and it's probably already started. We got a board meeting as well, and you're stuck with me. Anyway, in the early morning of April 14th, we lost a very prominent citizen in our community, Ross Kerwin. He was a person that I think most people around the table respected. We all honored him. We knew that he did a lot of good. Our Rotary Club is certainly not the club that we used to be with him gone. And from a personal point of view, he was a very dear friend of mine, an individual that I could call on and he could call on me. We were often seen inseparable on items. We did a lot of work together, and he's going to be missed. In 2003, Ross and Debbie arrived in our community. Doesn't seem that long ago, but it is. And I think almost instantly, Ross started his volunteer work. He's just that kind of person. He was a member of the Festival of the Arts, a board member for several years when he first arrived. He also served on the Huntsville Economical Development Committee. And shortly thereafter his arrival, he joined Rotary. And from the day he joined to the day he died, he was totally involved. That was his commitment. He did pretty near everything that we had tackled. There isn't a project that you can name where it doesn't have Ross's influence on it. He's the kind of guy that could get things done, could get people to cooperate, could get people to help. He was involved in a lot of our projects like DocFest, our annual auction, the May Marché. He worked on several Ontario games, the Winter Games, the Youth Games in 2010. He was most recently working on the Maple Leaf Alumni Hockey game, which is going to occur this time, we're sure of it, in October. One of the things that I think he valued the most was the building of the band shell. That was his dream. And in preparing to speak tonight, I wondered, why was he so passionate about it? And I got thinking, Ross was the kind of guy that liked the arts. He was always involved. He was the guy that built the sets. He was the guy that dictated us the quality we had to do. He was the one that got everybody together. I can recall back, about 8 or 10 years ago, Rob Saunders, the Festival of the Arts chair, would call in his buddy, his fellow Rotarians, to put up the old clamshell that we had in the park. It was a stage. Wasn't very nice. Wasn't very easy to put up. Was a lot of problems. I think that started Ross thinking about what he wanted to do. In the next year or so, I made many a trip with him around to various communities, both Halliburton, Barrie, Bracebridge, North Bay, looking at what their towns had for as far as band shells were concerned. And he started the process in 2014. The construction continued into 2015, and it was in I think the middle of the summer that we actually christened the band shell. Partway through, Ross ran out of money, which is unusual for him, and he came up with the idea of selling donor bricks. And that was a very good idea. It made us a lot of money, but nobody realizes, except probably a couple of us, just how difficult that was to have done. He went out, he found a quarry that would donate the bricks cut by the various sizes, depending what people wanted to build. And he also found us an engraver. Well, that's good. Only the engraver happened to be in downtown Alliston. Okay, so let's load these bricks up and ship them to him. No, it doesn't work that way. This individual didn't have a loading ramp, so we would gather up, a half a dozen or half a ton or whatever bricks that guy had time to do it. We'd drive to Alliston. You'd think you're going into an industrial complex. No, we drove through a whole bunch of residential streets. We came to this driveway, and we backed up in a long driveway, and there was the house. It was a gentleman in his 70s, and he was cutting bricks for us. And he actually died just before we finished. But again, that was something that Ross was able to do to gather it. I'm here to ask permission to do two things. I'd like to honor Ross, and I have two ideas. The first one on the thing is the crest you see on your screens. That's on the back of the main stage. And what I'm looking at doing is putting a plaque with Ross Kerwin band shell along the bottom. That particular idea does have its merits, and in Ross's quality, it would be done right. I'm actually working with Sanderson Monuments to get the proper material and to have it done professionally. However, I feel it's a little iffy for vandalism, and we've had a bit of it down there. The other thought is to do what I call the archway. That's so people are sitting out on the grass can see the Ross Kerwin band shell. That is 22 feet in the air, and I don't think it'll ever be vandalized. Rotary's proposing to do this at no cost to the town. We want to take this on. We feel that we've got to honor this gentleman. He's given a lot to us, and we want to see his name engraved in town. I'd like to point out that there's been a number of other examples of what we have done, what the community has done. Dara Hall Way at River Mill Park, we renamed that street. We've got the Payne Drive into the fire station. Well, these are individuals that people that have been in town know. Macaulay Robinson Ball Diamonds, there's two gentlemen that were unanimous. They ran the ball in their heyday. The Don Loach Arena, again, a mayor that did a lot for our community. And Lions Lookout, again, there was a service club that did a lot of work. I guess I'm here to ask your permission to allow us to go ahead with that. Our timing is going to be probably most of the summer. We're not trying to get it done for the memorial service on the 11th of June. It's just not enough time. But we're proposing to do it at Rotary's cost, and I would hope you would give me your permission to do it, and I'm here to answer any questions. One thing I'd like to do before I finish, Tina and Tarmo did give me the opportunity to go down to the area and look at it. And Tarmo, thanks very much for allowing me to visit with you and propose it. And there's a few little maintenance items that we've worked out how they get cleaned up before we do this. Any questions and comments?
Thanks, Peter. I think there'll probably be questions, and I'm going to start with Councillor Withy.
Sorry, Nance. Thank you, Peter. This is quite fitting for a great man that the town lost. You're absolutely right. He certainly embodied everything good about volunteerism and pitching in, and always with a grin on his face. Occasionally a sharp tongue to go along with it, but that was all good. I mean, I'm completely in favor of this, absolutely, whatever way you decide. Wondering if, I'm curious, as you didn't put the word memorial in there, was that on purpose, or was that?
Yes, it is on purpose. I think the word memorial means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I want the public to know that this was Ross Kerwin's dream. You know, we don't call it Don Loach Memorial Arena, you know, that type of thing. At the board level and at a lot of discussion level, we decided we would not include that word. We just wanted to honor the gentleman and what he did.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be very quick. I just wanted to thank Peter for bringing this forward. I echo, obviously, Councillor Withy's sentiments. I think this is a brilliant idea, and I agree with you completely. The Ross Kerwin band shell makes just, it's simple, and it says it all. And it's such a fitting tribute to an individual that you're bang on contributed so much. So thank you for bringing it forward, and absolutely supportive.
Thank you.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Peter. This absolutely, I couldn't say more. You know, I remember when the bandshell was in its midway, right? And like you said, we're not privy to the stories you told tonight. I mean, I wasn't even aware, but it makes sense now that when I reflect on it, how big a driver Ross really was on this project. And when you say that, you know, this was all him, this was him driving it, I believe it, because even after he and I kind of bickered a bit about where it should go or what should do, or about little details, he called me a few days later and said, "So you want a brick or what?" And I said, "You got it, Ross, you got it." So that was just, that's him. So I'm really pleased that you've brought this forward, and have my full support.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Peter, for coming and sharing the story with us, and I guess the club's dream to have the honor bestowed. I don't think we could ever pay him enough honor for his contributions to our community, and he'll be greatly missed, just as a person and the contributions that he made. So I will definitely support this, and I look happy to seeing it. Thank you.
Peter, thanks for coming, and thanks to the Rotary for coming up with the idea. I remember the day you stopped me on the street shortly after Ross passed away and sort of floated the idea, and at the time I think I said, absolutely, it's a no-brainer, and tells me I have read this council correctly, because that's exactly what everybody thinks. Ross was such a great contributor to our town. Not just the bandshell, but so many other things. I personally remember the first time that Rotary and the festival got together to do the spring play, and in came Ross, and that stage was full of wood and hammers and saws, and all of a sudden sets were built like we'd never seen before. He did so many things. I remember the day of the 150th Canada Day Parade. climbing up on top of the cake. I think there was something up there Ross wanted, and it just, he was just such a great guy. And I really love the archway one. I think that when people are sitting in that park looking at the stage, I love the idea of them seeing his name up there. So we will be passing a resolution later tonight, I'm sure.
Appreciate it. Just, again, a reminder, on the 11th of June, over at the Active Living Center, from 2 to 5, there will be a celebration of life for Ross. It's going to be a good day. There's going to be a free bar, so if you want to have a drink on Ross, it's an opportunity. But again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, we have a second deputation. Michael Walmsley from the Otter Lake Community on short-term rentals. There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. After hearing Peter's very uplifting presentation, I have this foreboding sense at the top of the gallery there that this may not be in the same era of that. But anyways, I look forward to the opportunity this evening just to sharing with council firsthand experiences that we are having in our Otter Lake community concerning short-term rental accommodations. And what I would see as this very serious repercussions that those rentals are having on our community. Otter Lake is a very small, spring-fed lake that measures a mere 2 kilometers in circumference. 2 privately owned roads encircle the body of water and provide deeded access to property owners. Otter Lake Road stretches for 1 kilometer along the western shoreline of Otter Lake. And there are a total of 20 residences lining that road, 5 permanent homes and 15 seasonal cottages. Essentially, the lake is so small that it is our common backyard. During the past 8 months, 5 residences have been sold, with another 2 currently up for sale and another one about to be listed. So far, 3 of the new owners have advertised their properties online with rental agencies as short-term rental accommodations. All of these properties being advertised prior to being granted a town-issued STRA license. One existing owner has been granted an STRA license. That means that currently 20% of the residences on our road are short-term rental accommodations. And with more residences up for sale every week, that number seems to be on an increasing trend. We're at a crucial point on Otter Lake Road where the number of rental properties will soon outnumber permanent residences. Ours is not a public resort destination. Yet, current online ads through such agencies as Airbnb would say otherwise. And I quote, "Our superhost is committed to providing great stays for guests on the highly sought-after Otter Lake. And Otter Lake Oasis awaits you. Escape to Otter Lake. This outstanding private family retreat location in the prime region of Muskoka is now available to the public and is great for bringing your families together for a post-pandemic holiday. I do not want our community to become a resort destination so that owners who rent as absentee landlords, their rental agencies, and the superhosts can make money off of our lake community. A previous resident sold her property 8 months ago and actually had an offer from the Airbnb company to buy her place, which fortunately she turned down. One of the owners currently selling her home owns the road, which is part of the parcel up for sale. Worst case scenario, Airbnb purchases the road, and we end up with their own resort community on our side of the lake. STRAs are destroying the very fabric of our community. On average, these rental properties are advertised as being able to accommodate 10 people each. That means currently 40 renters, strangers, on our private road and on our small lake at any given time. Otter Lake is the start of the Mary Lake watershed. We're that high up. We're spring fed. We have one outlet. The more people that are granted access to our lake through STRAs, the higher the potential for watershed disaster, from compromised septic systems, dangerous lighting of campfires, fireworks, etc. With renters on Otter Lake paying more than $500 per night up to $10,000 a week, they react to cautions by property owners with a definite sense of entitlement, such as, hey, we paid a lot of money to be here, and we can do whatever we want. It does not seem to matter if an owner has been previously breaking bylaws and is reported to the bylaw officer for renting during a COVID lockdown, advertising without a license, renting without a license, and having renters who have a campfire during a fire ban. We reported these actual infractions to the fire department, the police, and the bylaw officer. The ultimate end result? 2 days later, the owner was issued a license by the town. I would really implore council to look into stop issuing STRA licenses on Otter Lake and stop issuing STRA licenses to owners who openly defy town bylaws. Am I frustrated? Totally. A 10-minute presentation to council is really appreciated, but it only enables me to touch on the surface of what is happening at Otter Lake. I see this opportunity really as only the start of actions to end the existence of STRAs on Otter Lake. Because if it happens on Otter Lake and in our community, it's only a matter of time until this happens on your lake or in your community. I implore council to consider 3 actions on behalf of the Otter Lake community. Number 1, please immediately stop granting short-term rental accommodation licenses on Otter Lake. Number 2, rescind all existing short-term rental accommodation licenses previously granted to property owners on Otter Lake. And number 3, develop and enforce severe penalties for property owners and their rental agencies who operate short-term rental accommodations without a town-issued license. And I can give you a bit of an example there. There was a recent article concerning the city of Montreal, and research showed that 96% of the short-term rental accommodations in that city were operating without a license. and they looked into what to do about that situation. And they looked to San Francisco. And there, they found that finding the owners wasn't making a difference. When they find the agencies that were renting on behalf of the owners, that made the difference. And there were huge penalties, like $1,000 a day. But it dealt with the problem, and it did away with what was happening with short-term rental accommodations in that city. Huntsville, touch the past, embrace the future. I'm asking council to ensure that the Otter Lake community can embrace a future without the challenges and frustrations foisted upon us by the existence of short-term rental accommodations. I'm here to work with the council and the town in order to discover a route to that future. Please do not give any more STRA licenses to applicants on Otter Lake right from this moment, so that we can work together to deal and resolve the current situation before Otter Lake becomes a short-term rental accommodation lake and a resort destination. Please work with us to keep short-term rentals from impacting so negatively on our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for that. I'm going to see if there are specific questions. We do have this at the end of our agenda to be dealt with, but there may be council questions for you before we get there. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Not so much a question, just say, I just want to say thank you, Michael, for coming today and speaking to this.
Thank you.
I know we met there last week, and the passion we hear from you and the rest of the people who live on Otter Lake, that I think that council is going to have to do something about this, but just not on your lake. I think there's other lakes being affected in Huntsville, Port St. Anderson that we also do. So thanks again for coming today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Stone?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's all right. So again, you have, your passion is perfectly clear, and you're the voice of a great many out there. And we, as councillors, we do get the phone calls, and we're frustrated with the frustration. We hear that Huntsville is changing, and not necessarily for the better. We need to tighten our regulations and come down hard, especially on those that are renting without a license, and make sure the ones that do have a license do so very clearly and without any issues. Otherwise, there are great ramifications. So we hear you, and we're on it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Michael, for your presentation, and Councillor Stone's absolutely right. We're hearing a lot of this. As a matter of fact, I heard about it in the parking lot coming into the meeting tonight. Question I have, through you, Your Worship, maybe through our CAO, with regards to, one of the requests Michael made was a request to rescind licenses. What is our situation? Is there a legality involved? And maybe this is unfair to ask you of this, Madam CAO, but can we rescind licenses without due cause? Do we have time limits on the length of these licenses? And I guess that would be the next question. And then maybe the opportunity would be to not renew them, type of thing. So there's several questions there, so if you could, thank you.
I think maybe, Councillor Thompson, it might be a question better directed to Director Maxwell. I imagine that's what our CAO is going to do with it.
Okay, sorry about that. Through you, Your Worship, we would have to look at it from a legal perspective as to whether or not there could be any potential to rescind licenses without cause. The way the bylaw is structured currently, a license can be revoked if there's infractions, but not for no rationale other than we don't want them anymore. So we'd have to look into that. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second question.
The other part of that, Director Maxwell, was with regards to the length of the licenses that we're granting. Is there a time limit to them? Because I'm not up to speed exactly. Is it 1 year, 2 years, or is there a time limit?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, licenses are issued for the calendar year. So any license that is issued this year would expire at the end of December, and then they'd have to reapply for next year. So
If I may, one more, Your Worship. I know we rescinded the license, or actually barred one of the operators in one of the areas that Michael was talking about for a number of months from operating, I think because they didn't pay the MAT tax or they didn't have a license or whatever. So with what Michael's saying, a lot of these people, and I know there are some in my neighborhood as well that don't have licenses that are operating, you know, I guess what is the process going forward with regards to those people?
We have, I may let Director Maxwell take this one as well, but we do have processes in place for people who are advertising without licenses, people who are operating without licenses. I don't know whether, Director Maxwell, you want to get into the specifics of it, but we do have a penalty program, and we do have a licensing committee that deals with these independently of this council. Director Maxwell, do you want to add anything there?
thank you, Your Worship. I would just note that we have structured the short-term rental program and the licensing and the bylaw enforcement that goes along with it. We've gone through a lot of revisions and looked at how everybody else are dealing with things. And it seems to be that almost every other municipality is working towards a licensing process the same way we've already implemented. So we were ahead of the curve on that. I recognize that there are still issues that need to be worked through, and in some areas it's more challenging than others. But bylaw enforcement, we're trying to make it as simple as possible for everyone that has an issue, for it to be able to be addressed efficiently and effectively, which is what we did with the AMP program that we've enabled now. But there is a licensing committee. If people or hosts are behaving badly, they have to ask the licensing committee to reinstate their license if it's been refused. And so there is a process that's followed. It's just a bit complex.
Councillor Withey, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Worship, and thanks, Michael, for your presentation. Certainly expected and heard the passion there, as I've also visited as well. I am not a fan of STRAs, as you know, in our conversation. I don't like what they're doing to our communities. I think I'm heartened to hear that they're annual licenses, so we can make changes to policy that can have perhaps an effect on a lot of these issues. And I understand there's other municipalities that are making it only, STRAs only to be with somebody's principal residence. And I think two things we also need to do is, one, we need to fund our bylaw department more, so we have more people out there around the clock to deal with these issues that are happening mostly on weekends and in evenings with things like fireworks. And I certainly am interested and think it's a great path to look into is to going after the rental companies. Because we were on a call with earlier with a licensee that had broken the rules, and you know, the owner's explanation is, well, they had no idea what was going on. So I think that's ridiculous, and I think we've got a lot of cleaning up to do in this area. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship, and Michael, thank you for coming, and appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your feelings with us. It's been a long process to get the STR to this point where we are now. And I guess to Councillor Withey's comments, I certainly appreciate it. And we have put more teeth to this. And I think that you'll see that the ones that do ignore the request of the license, they won't have a license any longer. And I think you're going to see that that's going to be enforced, and that the community just won't stand for it. So, again, thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you. Your Worship, may I just make one comment?
You sure may.
I mentioned in my presentation that we want to work with the town to deal with this situation. And seeing Kirsten over there, I was able to get in touch with Kirsten via email, and we have set in process a plan whereby through Kristen and the bylaw office, we can educate our Otter Lake residents around what the bylaws are, and fully realizing that as a homeowner, we become the eyes and ears for the bylaw officer. We need to know through Kristen's education and what evidence is required. How do we give the bylaw officer something that will stick in terms of the repercussions from people who are either renting without a license or are putting bylaw infractions in place even with a license? So that process, I'm seeing a nod over there, yeah, way over there, yeah, is in place, and we'll be following up with that. So any other suggestions that council would have in the future, please pass them on, and we'll be glad to work with you to deal with this situation. So again, thank you very much this evening.
Okay. I just want to say, some time ago, when we were starting this process, we had a conversation about capping the number of short-term rentals in our town. We weren't so much thinking about specific areas, but I'm pretty familiar with the Otter Lake area, and a lot of what you say makes sense, and I am going to ask staff if there isn't a way to start looking at caps and looking at caps in specific areas such as waterfront. So I think we probably are going to go back to the drawing board and seeing how we can tighten up this program, but maybe even change it in certain respects, because what you're describing isn't really what we want to see happening, so.
Good. I appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the following council meeting minutes be adopted as printed and circulated. Regular council, April 25th, 2022, and special council, April 26th, 2022. All in favor? And that carries. And reports from committee. And I will start with the Committee of Adjustment and Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much. We had 7 applications, no significant issues, and all 7 were approved by committee. Committee did ask staff to bring back a report on the revegetation of shoreline from applications that we've had a few years ago, because we see all these bald scapes all the way down to the water, and then we ask them to revegetate, and I really want to see pictures of what we've been able to achieve. And I think Planning Committee would probably like to see that as well.
Any questions? Okay. Huntsville Public Library Board. Again, we're always a couple of months behind in our meeting minutes, but probably the one thing I want to mention, the Library Board is going to meet I think we're going to try to do it in person in June. It's going to be a special meeting for the library board and staff to talk about whether there's going to be a new look for the library post-COVID. So what changes will be made. So it's going to be a bit of a brainstorming session. So hopefully there'll be something to report back on that. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regards to the library, it's great that they were reopened. That's good to hear. But when are we going to, will we ever go back to 7 days a week, even 6 days a week? Right now, we're looking at 5 days a week, closed Sunday and Monday. And I know there are some of us who, run out of a book on Saturday night, and we really need a new book by Sunday.
Well, the budget for 2022, has staffing levels at 5 days a week, so whether the library opens up any more than that in 2022 is unlikely. However, they may, juggle. As people start requesting more, maybe they'll be able to juggle ways, but it already has been on the agenda to talk about for budget of 2023, to get back to longer opening hours and more days a week, so. Okay. You weren't going to come to town at Saturday night. BIA Board of Management, Councillor Stone.
Not a lot to report. The merchants are open and the crowds are coming back and the streetscape is looking beautiful and nearing completion, which we're all excited about. For June, all of June, there is the art crawl happening downtown where artists are in the stores with either they're doing art in there or they have their art in there, which you can see and purchase if you wish. So that's all of June. And the only other thing is in Rivermill Park on June 21st, I think we're hearing about it later, is the National Indigenous Day, and there will be vendors, music, and food in Rivermill Park.
Great. Questions? Okay, the Huntsville Lake Bays Chamber of Commerce update. Councillor Weed.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, nothing to update. We did not meet this last month, so no updates there. So I'll pick up with this next month.
And the Municipal Accommodation Tax Board has not met either, so no update there. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the General Committee meeting minutes dated April 27th, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting minutes dated May 11th, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. And Councillor Fitzgerald, is there anything you would like to highlight for council?
Shortest meeting, I think, in history, and Chair Alcock was very gracious to allow me to run it, to learn how to do these things. She started the meeting. There were one application for rural development, which we have been going back and forth on at planning, and we actually did approve it. And there was great discussion about plan of subdivision and green space and the lack thereof. So if anyone has any further questions, I'm available.
Questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution? That carries. Okay, previous business. I have a motion moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that council reconsiders recommendation GC 3722 and that Councillor Thompson declares conflict of interest. All in favor of reconsideration? And that carries. And the resolution being reconsidered, moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Weed. Be it resolved that staff be directed to advise Coldwell Banker that the town of Huntsville will not be renewing the lease of use of washroom facilities at 8 West Street, and further that staff be directed to commence a pilot project for the use of portable washrooms in Rivermill Park. So I actually asked for this to be reconsidered. I went back and watched the committee meeting minutes that day, and my belief was that we were getting out of our lease. We were asking the CAO to negotiate the summer months for us, and that we were going to put porta potties in the park commencing in September, and that we were asking staff to come back with the location for a permanent washroom for the year 2023. So if that is the rest of council's recollection, this resolution didn't really reflect that. So do I just set this one aside and then do that? Okay, so the part of it that didn't recognize that, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. be it resolved that paragraph 2 be struck out, which was the paragraph to commence a pilot project. So all in favor of that resolution? Hang on, sorry. Before I said all in favor, sorry, questions. And I think I saw Councillor Armour's face first, so.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just needed more so we're adding the part about doing a pilot project starting in September?
No, we're removing
Moving
the
it.
pilot project, which
And then-
suggests that we were doing it starting in July.
Oh, okay, thank you for clarification.
Councillor Stone? Councillor Withy?
I'm confused. What, so we're not doing this whole motion that we did before? That's gone?
Well,
Or just taking out part
just
of it?
taking out the last
Okay,
paragraph.
so
So
we're not renewing the lease still,
right,
and we're not doing the pilot project?
correct. But the next report says what we're going to do.
There's the missing
Yes.
link. I thought it's like, oh no, it's a free-for-all in River Mill Park. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, now that that's clear as mud, all in favor? And that carries, and Councillor Thompson still declares a conflict. So the main motion as amended, moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Schumacher, be it resolved that staff be directed to advise Coldwell Banker that the town of Huntsville will not be renewing the lease for the use of the washroom facilities at 8 West Street. All in favor? And that carries. Okay, now we have a new report on washrooms in River Mill Park. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Weed. Be it resolved that staff be directed to enter into a lease agreement with Coldwell Banker Thompson Real Estate for the use of the washroom facilities at 8 West Street during July and August of 2022, with the new terms outlined in Report CS 2022-18. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the required documentation. Director Babineau.
Thank you and good evening. The report is in front of you. We are just looking for the motion to have staff reach out and attain the new agreement for July and August and to have it signed. I'm here for any questions.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. To you too. I'm just curious, what are going to be the hours of operation? I know that one of the reports you talked about not opening in the evening or something.
Through you, Chair Terziano. The washrooms are going to be 7 days a week, 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. because they have asked that they have the same hours as their working hours so that somebody is in the building.
Well, just to follow up, so we're going to have less hours of operation, yet an increase in the lease payment.
Correct.
Who negotiated that?
Are there any other questions? Councillor Stone?
I just think it needs to be said that I'm disappointed that Coldwell Banker almost doubles the rent in these 2 months, and I'm disappointed with that. I am happy that the washrooms will be available, though.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you sure?
I'm seeing hands.
So you mentioned that the hours of operation are to the same hours that people are working in the building? Is that what the reasoning was?
Through you, Chair Terziano. At Caldwell's request, we were asked to shorten the days so that they had people in the buildings while we were having some real difficulties. And they've asked that we keep them to daytime hours, 9 to 4, when people were in the park, for 7 days a week. I don't think that they are going to be staffing that building 7 days a week,
Okay.
but they've asked, they've certainly obliged the request from us to keep them open for 7 days.
And what were the hours before?
We've changed, through your Chair Terziano, we've changed the hours many times over the last
Okay.
2 years.
That's okay. You don't need to go through that. Thanks.
Counselor Wiebe?
Thank you, Your Worship. So September, what happens in September?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, I believe that we are bringing in porta potties, and then a new plan is coming to council for a washroom facility.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And just for clarity, we will have a report in June, this next month, telling us what our permanent washroom plans will be. But we will have portable units for the fall if required. Councillor Armour.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just curious, do we have a plan in place for after 4 o'clock? Signage or something like that directing people to where the washrooms are? Because that park's heavily used after 4 o'clock also.
Yes, through you, Chair Terziano. The Club 55 washrooms are going to be open till 8 o'clock, 7 days a week. Yep.
Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Simone, for making this all happen. And I guess I'm curious to know when we're going to see the report, because I know this is going to take a long time to come to fruition about a permanent washroom situation. So is time of the essence? Would we have a timeline on the report? Because we're going to have to scramble next summer.
The report will be before us next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Simone.
Councillor Schumacher?
Thank you, through your worship. Hopefully this works. Yeah, glad to hear there's a report coming through. And what if there is an event going on at Rivermill? Is there an opportunity to sort of negotiate, or it's just a 4 o'clock cutoff and redirection to somewhere else?
Through you, Your Worship. Many of our partners in the community and the BIA is certainly going to oblige their patrons, but the events that also come into the park have to make sure that they're meeting those needs as well. So that's part of their seat application and their agreement that they bring forward. Yeah.
And then, Mayor Terziano, I just wanted to know if you need us to have yellow hands that we can raise, would that be easier?
We might resort to shouting out. Okay, all in favor of the resolution? And that carries, and Councillor Thompson declared a conflict. I just want to mention that we do have an idea that might get a permanent washroom into Rivermill Park even before next year if it works out, but we'll wait and see what June brings for that. But we are working on doing the best job we can do for the folks. Okay, we're at bylaws, and I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that bylaw numbers 2022-31 and 2022-71 to 2022-75 inclusive be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of May 2022. Bylaw to amend the procedural bylaw, an amendment to the delegation of authority bylaw, encroachment agreement, communications equipment, amendment to fees and charges bylaw, Bonomo 284 Springfield Road Shore Road Allowance, and Cripps 123 Stonia Camp Road rezoning. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Okay, we are all ready to new business. Is everybody still good to keep going? No break needed? Okay. We are at new business, and the first item is the renaming of the band shell at Rivermill Park. Oh, yeah, I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Withey, Councillor Wiebe. Okay, moved by Councillor Withey, seconded by Councillor Wiebe, where a request has been received by the Rotary Club of Huntsville to rename the band shell at Rivermill Park in honor of past Rotarian Ross Kerwin in recognition of his tireless efforts and dedication on the project Therefore, it is recommended the committee approves the renaming and direct staff to work with the Rotary Club of Huntsville on the dedication and related agreement as required by corporate policy, budget and finance 11 sponsorships and dedications, and further that is graciously offered by the Rotary Club of Huntsville, all costs to be borne by the club. Questions? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, Peter. And request for exemption to short-term rental accommodation. And I think Michael outlined the steps that he was looking for. I know we don't have a resolution tonight, but I think that we have, oh, we do have a resolution tonight. Oh, very quick. So I need, well, let me read the resolution, see if we can get a mover and seconder. Whereas council received a deputation from Michael Walmsley requesting an exemption for all Otter Lake residents from the short-term rental accommodation bylaw, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to meet with the Otter Lake residents and provide information and education on enforcement of town bylaws, and further that staff investigate options for restricting the number of short-term rental accommodation licenses. All done. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Armour and Deputy Mayor Alcock. Any questions, comments? Councillor Withey?
It's probably not appropriate with this motion, but I was interested in, as I was thinking during the presentation about, is it possible to put a moratorium on issuance of any new licenses on that lake as well?
I think that will fall under the last paragraph.
Is this sort of,
The investigate options for restricting.
thank you, Councillor Alcock. Your gestures are well received. Okay, thank you.
All in favor of the resolution? And that carries. Okay, I'm not sure, this doesn't seem to be on my agenda, but it's all right. It's on yours, so. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher and seconded by Councillor Armour. Whereas on behalf of the Huntsville High School Sexuality and Gender Acceptance Student Group, Allison Turnbull, principal, has submitted a request to council to paint the crosswalk connecting the Canada Summit Centre to High School Park Drive in the colors representing Pride and the progressive Pride flag. And whereas council is proud to affirm its commitment to diversity and inclusion of all, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to mark the crosswalk with signage depicting the progressive Pride flag in honor of the 2022 Pride Month celebrations, demonstrating council's ongoing commitment towards diversity and inclusion. And further that council directs staff to work collaboratively with the Huntsville High School Sexuality and Gender Acceptance Student Group and other community partners to develop plans and 2023 budget amount for Pride celebrations in June of 2023, including having the crosswalk connecting the Canada Summit Centre and Huntsville High School painted in the rainbow colors representing the 2S LGBTQI+, two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, and additional sexual orientations and gender identities. This all came up quite suddenly this past week with a request from the high school. And Tarm, I don't know if you want to speak to it, or I'm not putting you on the spot. I will if you don't want to, but I think you had the final conversations.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Allison Turnbull, the student group had come up with this quite last minute as an idea to paint the crosswalk. We researched that really, really quickly using connections we have with other municipalities that have done the painting of the crosswalk, municipalities like Barrie and Collingwood being larger ones. And looking at the materials cost, there's a significant cost to the paint. because it has to be road grade paint so it doesn't wear down. And then the second part of that is that these are colors that the road line painting companies typically don't stock. It would be yellow and white would be the typical colors stocked. So they would be buying this in smaller quantity, and of course that increases the cost. So we'd be looking at a cost of about $20,000 to do the crosswalk. And plus time and getting the materials, which we wouldn't have in time for the Pride celebrations for this year. So we thought it better to work with various different partners, an opportunity to work with the student groups, with the high school so that they learn a little bit about civics and maybe the council process and be involved, and look at including that in next year's Pride celebrations.
Questions, Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. I mean, conceptually, I don't have an issue with this. I'm wondering why or how they got to settling on the crosswalk connecting the Summit Center to the high school, which, as we heard from Tarmo, creates cost rather than, say, the sidewalk in front of the high school or somewhere else. I'm just wondering why that particular place was chosen as opposed to another one.
Yeah, I mean, it was the request of the high school. If you've ever been over there in the morning or at lunchtime, the students are just nonstop back and forth. I guess it's a highlighted area for them, so. But, I mean, something other outside of a crosswalk can be something that can be worked towards too when everybody gets together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, as I said, I don't have a problem with this at all. It's just, I was just curious as to why there rather than somewhere else that might all be equally as appropriate. They all stream down to Pizza too, so we could do that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Councillor
Before I
Reid.
get nasty, lad.
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess I'm wondering, so if it's, what would the process be? So if it gets painted with the high-grade road paint, then I'm assuming it stays there and gets refreshed every year. Would that be the plan? Or, you know, if they just used regular paint, they could kind of go big with it, and it probably wouldn't be a big cost. It would probably wear out by the end of the month. But I don't know. I guess I'm trying to see it through with the like the road paint aspect of it, instead of just kind of having a fun day of it and going for it.
Through you, Madam Chair. The answer to that is we're looking in, that is a possibility, but we're looking into the insurance aspects related to a municipal roadway to see what the actual requirements for road painting is. And then the other thing is we're not stuck on this one idea about the crosswalk. Working with that group and that student group, as well as other interested community groups, we may settle on a different location and a different project in the end of the day.
Follow-up?
Thanks for that. There's a few neighborhoods down in the Portland area and whatnot that they just go for it. They paint intersections, and it's amazing what it does to community spirit and sort of social spirit there. So I would say, if you have to get cheap paint, get it, but go for it, go big, and let me know how I can help.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for your volunteering, Councillor. I'm sure with your talents, you'll be a great painter as well as a builder as well. I think part of the problem, and I'm speaking on maybe where Tarmo should be speaking to this, but I know with road paint, I mean, right now we're obligated to using water-based paints, even though it's roads, and whereas once before we could use oil, and oil would stand up a lot better, but oil, water-based just doesn't hold up as well as we've seen, you know, at the intersections here on Main Street, like at Center and Main Street type of thing, how that has created problems when we changed the traffic patterns there. So I think what Tom was talking about is this is specialized paint for this particular kind of project. Now, having it at the crosswalk, maybe between the Centennial Center and the high school, probably wouldn't get as much traffic and probably wouldn't get the salt and the sand that that Brunel Road would get as well, so it might last a little bit longer. So I have a feeling that once that's applied, because of the quality of the paint, that probably it wouldn't necessarily be an annual application because of the amount of traffic that is there as opposed to being Brunel Road. But that's just speculation on my part as well, so.
Counselor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's a great idea, and I think maybe we should arm them with lots of street chalk, and they should start their event with those artists expressing themselves, and it lasts as long as it lasts. It's about them coming together and celebrating each other through street art. So I'll personally donate it. Tarmo, if you need any assistance in that respect.
Okay. All in favor of the resolution then? And that carries. Okay, general information, council correspondence is in your package. District of Muskoka updates. Deputy Mayor Alcott, Community and Planning Services.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I can't report this month because for the first time, and I can't remember when, I did not attend the Community and Planning Services Committee last week. Gasps.
Are there any questions? Thank you for that. Councillor Withey, Health Services.
Thank you, Worship. I was in attendance for my meeting. We had our meeting last Thursday morning. Health Services Committee met. Not a huge agenda, a couple of highlights. We heard from the executive chair and nurse practitioners and board chairs for Andy's House. They were wanting a letter of support from district for funding for more of their palliative care beds, which they had already applied for and had been turned down, which, as I explained, even though in support, it doesn't surprise me from being on the lane on how those things work. There's only so many beds that they can fund, but anyways, that was something that we heard about. There was a interesting report on the West Muskoka paramedic deployment about how they want to move. Do you know any of this stuff anymore, ex-commander? Move resources to cover more of the West Georgian Bay area. That was interesting. The one that really caught my eye, though, is we're moving ahead with the Fairburn project and the takeover of district of the Fairburn home by June 30th. So that's exciting. We're getting all those pieces put together. There was a minor budget deviation to deal with that, and I mean really minor. So that was, so we're full steam ahead. And I don't know if anyone's been up Center Street lately. They've started in on the road, so now people can see exactly where it's going to be, which is also very exciting. And hopefully there'll be some action in actual building very soon. So with that, there wasn't a heck of a lot else that was. The usual reports from the paramedics, et cetera, but all good. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Councillor Armour?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just want to make note that this is Paramedic Week this week, so thank you, paramedics.
We didn't hear that last week. Oh, that was last week.
Yeah, just wanted to bring it out.
Councillor Thompson, Engineering and Public Works.
You betcha. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we had quite a good meeting and a little bit of an emotional meeting as well, which I'll get into in a moment. But first thing we dealt with was the bin site transition process, which has been underway now for some time and was to be completed by November of 2023. It has been extended to 2026 just because of the complexity of the whole issue. And as a result of that, the consultant that we've been working with has been asked to continue consulting at a cost of another $225,000. That's to a consulting firm GHD Limited type of thing. So they're going to be around, and they've proved to be very, very helpful. And this is a very, very complicated issue, and it's been complicated further by the whole Georgian Bay issue, because half of the Georgian Bay
constituents are actually boat access only type of thing. So for them to dispose of their solid wastes is really problematic type of thing. And so solving that and to some degree also with Muskoka Lakes, but to a lesser degree. But I think it probably goes for just, there's hardly a municipality, there's no municipalities in Muskoka that do not have, situations where we have lake access situations. But Georgian Bay is particularly problematic because of the numbers there. We awarded a number of contracts. The biggest one to Fowler Construction for $6.8 million to reconstruct Santa's Village Road. And that's been in the works for quite a while, but as a result of that, there have been some adjustments made, to the overall budget type of thing. One of the things that was brought up under transportation too was a review of the license of occupation for one location on Beaumont Drive. And Beaumont Drive, for those of you who don't know, is adjacent to the Muskoka River as it empties into Lake Muskoka, and it's across the river from Santa's Village Road. But anyway, what came to light was the license of occupation for the District of Muskoka. You can have access to the water and get permission to build a dock or a boathouse in this particular case for an annual fee of $600 and some. So you're getting waterfront for $600 and some. So this has been a burr in my saddle for ever since I've been on council, because I'm thinking we're awarding people waterfront access for $600 a year, whereas those of us who have waterfront access are paying serious money to have waterfront type of thing. So that's going to be reviewed, and I think rightfully so, because maybe it'll be based on the amount of waterfront that these people are having, or the size of the structure that they're building or propose to build, that kind of thing. So different ways of looking at it that way too. So then we had a presentation of projects during the last 8 years as through the duration, I should say, of Commissioner Hahn's tenure with the district. And then, of course, we had a farewell to our commissioner, because he is leaving us after 8 years with the district, and he's retiring. So we're happy for him, but sorry to see him go, because he's been great. And I think one of the comments that was most, I guess, gratefully expressed around the table was the fact that the former commissioner was Tony White, and Tony White was an amazing individual, but he knew everything that was going on. So, I mean, there having situations when I was asked questions in this council about something that went on at district, and I could email him, and I'd have an answer before the meeting was over. He was that tuned in. What we liked with Fred was that we got to meet all the directors and all the people that were on his staff, which we never did with Tony White type of thing. So that was great, and so we liked that about it. But anyway, we're sorry to see Fred go. And our next meeting will be a joint meeting with Corporate Services, Your Worship, on May 30th, and that'll be, I guess, our last goodbye to Fred, but also we'll get a chance to meet our new commissioner as well at that time. So, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. I was kind of surprised to hear that we're going to 2026 for those bins, but I'm sure a lot of people will be relieved. I know a lot of people I know have started making alternate arrangements and, purchase trailers, that kind of thing. So does this affect the plan for a transfer station at Medill Church at all? Does this affect the plans for the transfer yard at Medill Church yard?
No.
No?
No.
So that's going to carry on and
But that's still in the works. I think the only question I have with regards to that was with Director Hernan and his report and Commissioner Hahn's report. There was a variation on the amount of property. One had 10 acres and one was 10 hectares. And I think we all appreciate there's a difference in the size. So that's the only thing. But no, because of what's been going on at EPW and with landfills and so on and so forth, and the different challenges that we've had with the environmental issues and so on and so forth, and climate change issues as well, it just hasn't gone forward. So, but it's still in the works for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Thompson. The reference to extending the bin transition to 26, we're still going ahead, though, with the first phase, right? There are a number of bins that are being removed, starting, I think, this June. Is that, am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, nothing's really changed in that particular area. It's just there's certain areas of the whole application of this process that's taking longer than we had anticipated, or I guess that we had planned. See, originally it was legislated by the MOEC that they wanted all this done and completed by November 2023, and so we were working really hard, and Director Mack was, up nights and weekends and everything else trying to get it done. But anyway, there just wasn't enough time, so the request was made to the MOEC and they granted it, so, yeah.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. Through you on another note, Councillor Thompson, I'm just wondering, a few months ago, we had a request come through for a speed reduction on Bernal Road, just past Riverside School. I just wonder if there's been any discussion on that yet.
I will follow up on that, Councillor. I haven't heard any changes on that. So I think if the request has gone forward and it was passed, it'll be coming. Yep.
Okay. Finance and Corporate Services meeting. We had an update from Muskoka Futures on the loan program through COVID, and really good news there. The Muskoka Futures is already able to pay the district back their $750,000, and they said many of the loans that were out there, the people are already paying them back, and they're not required to for another year and some. So really good program throughout Muskoka. We had a report on the alternate member compensation, and this is not just when an alternate attends district, such as when you do it, Councillor Wiebe, but when we've had councillors take a leave, such as Mayor Smith is on leave now, so his alternate can be compensated for attending in his absence. And we had a report on a gradual return to in-person meetings at district, and that's going to take somewhat longer. They're going to try to do committee meetings in July and August. You can attend in person or by Zoom. And after that, they're going to look at an option for council meetings in September, except for the fact they can't do September because there'll be construction going on. So the first in-person council meeting, which will still be optional, I believe, will be in October, election month. So not in a hurry to go back to district, everyone. And then the district council meeting, we had a presentation from the Watershed Committee, which I think we're having tomorrow morning at General here, so some of us will see it a second time. We had a great mapping update from the GeoHub folks at District on flood mapping and Muskoka Votes mapping, and it's actually quite interesting. So if anybody's bored, go to the GeoHub on the District website. Their mapping is something. We talked a little bit about the Lame Duck Council dates, and we did agree to do a site preparation deal for our new Fairburn here that's going to be negotiated with Sanford, the developer that's there, to get that done at a better cost while they're in there doing the roads and things. So that's a good news story. And of course, as Councillor Thompson mentioned, we had the retirement of Commissioner Yon and also the retirement of Commissioner Hastings from Planning and Community Services. And that brings us to general information, couple items. It is National Accessibility Week, and we have the flag raising this Friday morning at 10:45. I think Councillor Schumacher and Armour, you're attending that as well. June 15th, we have the Mayor's Bike Ride. It hasn't been around since I've been mayor, so that'll be fun. The Town of Huntsville and Sport Lab will host that down at River Mill Park at 6:30 on Wednesday. Wednesday, June 15th, and we're going to do a 12-kilometer bike ride through the streets of Huntsville. And I have an e-bike, so it'll be no trouble. And National Indigenous Peoples' Day, as Councillor Stone mentioned earlier, that is June 21st, and that will take place in Rivermill Park from 3 to 8. And if it's raining, it will be held in the Algonquin Theatre, and we will have live Indigenous music, entertainment, storytelling, and lots of activities. So hopefully all of council marks both the 15th and 21st on their calendars. And with that, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2022-76 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 24th day of May 2022. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 7:41 p.m. All in favor? And that carries. And council, we did pass the resolution for a new procedural bylaw, so although we're supposed to meet here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in the council chambers, I assume you can Zoom, Madam Clerk, if you choose to.
Tomorrow will be our first hybrid meeting, which means some deputations, invited presentations can Zoom in should they, if they've told us ahead of time. And I believe the deputy clerk has noted we have 2 of them Zooming in.
But we expect council all here.
Yes, we anticipate all of council here tomorrow.
Okay. See everyone at 9 a.m. tomorrow.